You know, this is what some consider the most wonderful time of the year. It's that Christmas season. And in the weeks leading up to Christmas, we're going to talk about the impossible things that God does. So let's start today. It's time for Grace Points. You know, I love hearing stories about things that were accomplished that to everyone else seemed impossible. I love hearing stories about people who overcame what seemed to be insurmountable odds and they were able to accomplish great things because they stuck with it and they persevered. But the impossible can feel discouraging because it is impossible for some of us to do certain things. We just have to deal with some things are just out of my reach. But this is what I love about God. God does impossible things. One of my favorite stories is the story of the Wright brothers. December 17th, 1903, they performed the first heavier-than-air flight. And they get this winged thing up into the air and they flew, and no one really believed that it was possible. In fact, no one really believed that they did it. It was more than a year later, and the Scientific American magazine was still asking them for more proof because they didn't believe it. And now, 2023, the FAA services more than 45,000 flights per day. And nobody believed it was possible. But God does impossible things. Luke chapter 1 verse 37 tells us, "For with God nothing will be impossible." I love that. For with God nothing will be impossible. This is the narrative of the angel appearing to Mary and telling her, you're going to conceive and you're going to bear a son. And that boy is going to be the Messiah. He's going to be the Son of God. In fact, your cousin Elizabeth is pregnant right now, and she's not even supposed to be able to have children. But this is just to show you that with God, nothing is impossible. God does impossible things all the time. And for so many of us, we are facing what seems to be impossible odds. We're dealing with impossible situations at work or impossible situations at home, impossible situations with our health or impossible situations with our finances. And we're asking God to perform the impossible, and it seems like God isn't helping. And we've got to ask ourselves three questions. Number one, do I really have faith in the impossible? If it feels like God isn't helping, do I really believe that God does the impossible? But number two, does what I'm asking of God align with who God is and His will for me? Because I'm pretty selfish. And sometimes what I want has nothing to do with God's will or even who God is. And I've got to ask myself, is my request even in alignment with what I profess as my belief in God? Last thing, I've got to ask myself, what are my motivations for what I'm asking God? Is it just so I can have what I want? Is it so that I can follow the will of God, so that I can be in line with His plan and purpose for my life? What's our motivation? Because God is always doing impossible things. And maybe the reason that I feel like the impossible hasn't happened is because maybe I'm out of alignment, or maybe it doesn't fit within who God is, or maybe I just don't have faith. I believe that the impossible is the perfect blank canvas for God to display His glory and grace. That's right. I think our lives with those impossible situations are perfect for God because God does impossible things. That's what this whole season is, right? He's born of a virgin, impossible. He'll grow into a man and He'll perform miracle after miracle, turning water to wine, impossible. Walking on water, impossible. Raising Lazarus from the dead, impossible. And all of this to show us that God does impossible things. You know what's the most beautiful miracle of all? Is that God saves me and you. Yeah, you. That may feel impossible with all of your mistakes and all of your missteps and all of the sinful things we've done. But that virgin birth, that man who walked on water, the one who raised Lazarus from the dead, is the same one who's going to be crucified for our sins, to do the impossible, to save me and you from ourselves. So what is impossible for you today? I don't know what it is, but I'm here to tell you, it may be impossible for you, but nothing is impossible for God. Why? Because God does impossible things. Anyway, 'tis the season for the impossible. Looking forward to seeing you next week. This is Gracepoints. God bless you.